Dr. Patricia Kwan didn't gasp. She didn't drop the folder or reach for the phone. She just went quiet, reading the same line twice like it might change if she looked hard enough. Then she looked up at me, Walter Beckett, and for 5 long seconds she didn't say a single word. 5 seconds doesn't sound like much until you're sitting in a pediatric office in Scottsdale with your grandson asleep against your ribs at 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and the silence starts doing math you don't want done. Mr. Beckett. Her voice came out slow, careful, the way you talk to someone you're not sure can take what's coming. How long has he been having trouble staying awake like this? Milo was 6, 7 next month, and he was out cold against my shoulder, not resting, not the kind of nap a healthy boy takes after a big lunch. Gone. The kind of sleep that doesn't belong at 3 o'clock, with a Happy Meal toy still in his fist. I looked down at his face, slack and pale, then back up at her. I don't know, I said. That's why I'm sitting in your office, instead of at home watching the game. Hey, before we go further, if you've got kids or grandkids of your own, hit subscribe and stick around, because where this one goes, you are not going to believe. Let me back up, because you need the whole picture to understand why an old man like me ended up sitting in a clinic instead of enjoying a Wednesday afternoon. Milo's birthday wasn't for another few weeks, but I'd promised him a practice run, a pre-birthday. His idea, not mine, because 6-year-olds negotiate like tiny lawyers. I told him I'd swing by Tuesday and take him to the batting cages, the kind with the soft toss machines for the little ones, because that boy has been obsessed with baseball since the day his father put a plastic bat in his hands. I'd been laid up myself the week before, with a hip that's been arguing with me since my last knee surgery, and by the time I could walk without wincing, I'd already missed the actual pre-birthday I promised. That ate at me more than the hip did. I kept picturing him standing at the door, checking the driveway. So Tuesday afternoon, a little after 1, I got myself dressed, grabbed the mitt I'd bought him, good leather, broken in myself over a week so his hands wouldn't have to fight it, and drove from my place in Fountain Hills over to Chandler, where my son Aaron and his wife Kaylee live in a nice enough house with a saguaro out front that Milo insists on naming every season. Simple plan. Pick him up, hit some balls, get ice cream after. Let him tell me every detail about school, about his friends, about whatever 6-year-olds care about that week. Make up for lost time. Funny how a simple errand turns into the longest day of your life. I pulled up and rang the bell. Kaylee opened the door with her phone wedged between her ear and shoulder, barely glancing at me. Hey, Walt. He's in his room. She turned and walked off mid-sentence to whoever was on the other end of that call. Something about a listing and a closing date. I stood there in the entryway holding that mitt like an idiot, feeling exactly like what I was, a grandfather showing up to make good on a promise, getting waved through like a delivery man. I headed down the hall. Milo's door has a little laminated sign he made in kindergarten, all crooked letters. Milo's room, knock 2 times. I knocked twice. Hey, bud, it's Grandpa Walt. Nothing at first. Then, some shuffling, slow, like furniture being dragged. The door opened, and Milo stood there, and something in my chest just dropped straight through the floor. He didn't look sick, not runny nose, not fever flush. He looked heavy, eyes half shut, head kind of lolling, like he was underwater and trying to swim up toward me. Grandpa! He smiled, but it arrived about 2 seconds late, like the message had to travel a long way to get to his face. Hey there, slugger. I kept my voice light, crouched down so we were eye to eye. Ready to go swing the bat? I brought you something. He leaned against the doorframe like it was the only thing holding him vertical. Kinda sleepy, Grandpa. Sleepy. I checked my watch. 1:15 in the afternoon on a school day he wasn't at school for, apparently, because nobody had mentioned that either. He shrugged. The universal 6-year-old shrug that means grown-ups worry too much. I stepped inside and sat on the edge of his bed, handed him the mitt. He worked the zipper of the bag slower than any kid I've ever watched unwrap anything, and when he finally got the glove out, his whole face lit up, the real thing this time, not the delayed version. It smells like a baseball glove, he said, like that was the whole point, which honestly it is. He turned it over in his hands, studied the stitching the way kids study things they've decided to love forever. Then he set it on his pillow, careful, deliberate, like he was saving a spot for it, and he got quiet. That specific quiet a kid gets when he's building up the nerve to say something. I waited him out. He looked up at me, really looked, The kind of look kids give you when they want to make sure it's just the two of you in the room. He leaned in close, put both hands on my knee like he was steadying himself. Something in me already knew before my brain caught up to it. "Grandpa," he whispered, "can you tell Mommy to stop giving me the sleepy medicine in my milk? I don't like how it feels." The room didn't tilt. My heart didn't stop. I didn't grab him by the shoulders and make him say it twice. I just nodded, slow, like he'd told me something perfectly ordinary, like what time his favorite show comes on. "Okay, bud." I stood up and held out my hand. "Let's go for a little drive, you and me. I want you to understand something about me. I spent 31 years as a fire captain in 3 different departments before I retired, and you learn something in that job. You learn what it feels like when something's wrong before you can name it. An alarm going off in a building you know too well. You feel it in your gut before your ears even catch up." I carried him downstairs. Kaylee was still on the phone in the kitchen, laughing at something, pacing a little circle by the island with her coffee. Laughing. "Gonna take Milo out for a bit," I said. "Little grandpa outing." She waved a hand without turning around, phone still glued to her ear. "Sure, yeah, have fun." Didn't even look up. I buckled Milo into his booster in the back of my truck. An old red Silverado I've had since before Aaron finished college. Milo likes sitting up high, says it makes him feel like the co-pilot. I pulled out of that neighborhood, doing exactly the speed limit the whole way to the clinic I trusted. The one where Dr. Kwan had seen him twice before for ear infections, and never once talked down to me like I was some confused old man who didn't understand his own grandson. I didn't call Aaron yet. I didn't call the police yet. First, I needed to know what I was actually dealing with, because accusing somebody based on a sleepy 6-year-old's whisper isn't justice, it's just noise, and I've never been a man who deals in noise. I walked in, told the front desk it was urgent, and, when they got us back, I sat across from Dr. Kwan and told her everything, word for word, exactly what Milo had said. The whisper, the heavy eyes, the way he'd been swaying on his feet like a man 3 drinks in. She didn't give me the look I half expected, the grandpa's overreact look. She checked Milo over, watched him eating goldfish crackers off the exam table like it was any old Tuesday, and she ordered a full panel, blood and urine both. "We'll have something in about 45 minutes, she said, so we waited. Somewhere around the 30-minute mark, Milo climbed off that table, curled up against my side in the waiting chair, and just went out, like a switch flipped. I sat there staring at a poster about hand washing, and I thought about him standing in that doorway, swaying, about how close I'd come to just letting it go, chalking it up to a growth spurt like everybody else apparently had. What if I hadn't come Tuesday? What if I'd waited for the actual birthday like I'd told him I would? The door opened. Dr. Kwan walked back in holding the printout, and she stopped and she read it again, and there were those 5 seconds I told you about at the start. Then, "Mr. Beckett, how long has he been having trouble staying awake like this?" "What's in his system?" I asked. She sat down, turned the sheet so I could read it myself. Diphenhydramine, Benadryl, the same stuff you'd give a kid for a bee sting or a bad allergy season. Perfectly safe, used the right way. Except the levels in Milo's blood, her exact words, were consistent with sustained, repeated dosing over a period of months. Not a single mistake, not an accident. Repeated, sustained, months. I read that sentence 3 separate times before it fully landed. Then I folded my hands together and breathed slow through my nose. "Is his mother home right now, Doctor?" Kwan asked, gentle but direct. "Yes." "Mr. Beckett, I have to report this. It's the law. I know you do." I looked her straight in the eye. "Give me 24 hours before you make that call." She studied me a long moment. The way you size up somebody before deciding whether to trust them with something delicate. Whatever she saw in my face must have told her I wasn't going to drive back to that house and do something I'd regret. 8 tomorrow morning, she said finally. "If I haven't heard from you by then, I make the call myself. No exceptions." "Understood." We shook on it. I carried Milo out to the truck, buckled him in, mitt tucked against his chest, even asleep. The drive back to Fountain Hills took 22 minutes. I counted every one of them. He slept the whole way, mouth open, one hand curled around that new glove, like even unconscious he knew to hold on to something good. I didn't call anybody yet. I just drove the speed limit and let the quiet do its work. because quiet organizes a man's thoughts better than any amount of talking ever will. I thought about that missed pre-birthday, how guilty I'd felt over a hip that wouldn't cooperate, when the whole time, something far worse than a broken promise had been happening to my grandson 3 miles from my own front door. 31 years pulling people out of buildings teaches you something else too. When the damage runs deep, you don't fix it loud. You fix it careful. And I was only getting started. The hardest part of finding out somebody's betrayed you isn't the anger. It's the inventory going back through every little thing you brushed off, every excuse you accepted because you trusted the wrong person. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was falling apart. Understand that about me. I don't fall apart, never have. I sat in my recliner with the lamp low and coffee going cold on the side table, and I thought it through methodically, the way I used to walk a scene after a fire, looking for where it started. What did I know? My grandson had been drugged, repeatedly, in his own home, by somebody responsible for keeping him safe. What didn't I know yet? How long? How deep? And the one that kept me up past midnight, why? If you've stuck with me this far, do me one favor before we keep going. Hit that subscribe button. Costs you nothing. Means a lot to an old man telling these stories. Drop a comment too. Let me know you're out there. Wednesday morning, 6:30. I called Aaron. Not to unload everything, not yet. I needed to hear his voice first. Take his temperature before I handed him something that was going to rearrange his whole life. He picked up on the first ring, already sounded awake. Hey Dad, everything all right? Everything's fine, son. Question for you, how's Milo been lately? Notice anything different? A pause. The kind that tells you he's actually turning it over in his head, not just being polite. He's been sleeping a ton, actually. Kaylee said it's probably a growth spurt. Another pause. Why, what's up? Growth spurt. There it was again. No reason, I said, keeping it light. Just missed our pre-birthday plans, feeling guilty about it. Any chance he could stay with me a week or two? Grandpa time, make it up to him. I could hear the smile in his voice. Dad, he'd love that. Let me run it by Kaylee. Appreciate it, son. I hung up and sat with that a minute. Growth spurt. Aaron had looked his own son in the face, the heavy eyes, the swaying, the sleeping at all hours, and filed it away under growth spurt because his wife told him to. That's not a bad father. That's a blindfolded one. There's a real difference, and I needed to hold on to that difference, because I was about to need patience with my own son, not just anger at somebody else's. By 9 that morning, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Frank Delgado, a man I'd used years back settling my late wife Dorothy's affairs, and never forgot, because he doesn't waste your time or his own. I laid it all out on his desk, the clinic report, Dr. Kwan's notes, photos of the lab results I'd taken on my phone. He put his glasses on and didn't say a word for a solid 2 minutes. Then he looked up. Walter, you understand what you're describing? I do. Child endangerment. Possibly worse depending on how long this has been going on. He set the glasses down. Who knows right now? You, me, the doctor. Not Aaron, not yet. He nodded slow. Good instinct. Before you tell him, you want this locked down tight enough he can't talk himself out of believing it. A man hears something like this about his own wife. His first move is denial. You take that option away with paper, not with feelings. He was dead right, and I knew it. What do I need? I asked. Medical documentation, which you've got. Pharmacy records, if this thing's traceable. A clear timeline, and somebody watching that house. He slid a card across the desk before I could ask. Sal Ferreira, private investigator, works most of the valley. Thorough, Frank said. Doesn't talk more than he needs to. I pocketed the card. One more thing, Frank added, leaning forward. When Aaron calls back about Milo staying with you, say yes fast. And get that boy out of that house today if you can manage it. Already ahead of you. He almost smiled. You've done something like this before? Not this exact thing. But I've walked into a lot of burning buildings not knowing what I'd find. You learn to move careful and fast at the same time. Aaron called back at 11 that morning. Kaylee's fine with it. Said it might be good for him. Change of scenery, get some fresh air. He laughed a little. Called it a bonding thing. Bonding thing. She'd handed my grandson over without a single follow-up question. Didn't ask how long. Didn't ask what we'd be doing. Didn't even come to the phone to say goodbye to him herself. I filed that away with everything else. I'll swing by this afternoon, I said. I pulled up to that house in Chandler at 2 sharp. Milo was already at the door with his backpack and that new mitt, standing there waiting like he'd been counting the minutes. Kaylee stayed somewhere in the back of the house, didn't come to see him off. I buckled him in. He looked a shade brighter than the day before, a little more himself. Maybe one night, without whatever she'd been putting in his milk, maybe just being out of that house. "Are we having an adventure, Grandpa?" he asked. "The best one, bud," I said, and I meant that more ways than a 6-year-old could understand. "Let me tell you about Kaylee now, and I'm going to be fair, because fair matters even when you're furious, maybe especially then. She grew up rough. I knew that much from Erin, raised by a single mother in a rough part of Tucson, clawing her way to something better. By the time she met Erin, she was 27, sharp, driven, the kind of woman who impresses you the second she walks in a room. I liked her fine at first, and I'll be honest about that too. But somewhere along the way, and none of us saw it coming, the life she'd built stopped feeling like something she wanted and started feeling like something she had to hold up. Erin traveled constantly for his sales job. Milo was loud and curious and demanding in the exact way healthy kids are supposed to be, and Kaylee was in that house feeling like the walls were closing in tighter every week. I'm not saying that excuses one single thing she did. I'm saying I understand the difference between somebody evil and somebody desperate. And I've learned the hard way that desperate people do evil things too, and it doesn't make the evil smaller, but it does make it make sense. What I didn't know yet, what Sal Ferreira was about to hand me, was exactly how desperate she'd become. Sal called Thursday evening. "Mr. Beckett, got something for you. Can you meet?" "How soon?" "You tell me." I was at the diner on Shea in 15 minutes. He beat me there. Stocky guy, quiet eyes. Exactly the sort you'd forget 5 minutes after passing him on the street, which I imagine is the whole point of his job. He ordered black coffee and slid a folder across the table without a word. I opened it. Photographs. Clean and time-stamped. Kaylee and a man I'd never laid eyes on. Tall, expensive haircut. The kind of ease that comes from things always going his way. A receipt from a resort out in Scottsdale. Another from a hotel off the 101. Dates that lined up. I checked myself. Believe me, with nights Erin had been on the road for work. Name's Derek Ashworth. Sal said. 41. Owns a couple of car dealerships out this way. How long? I asked. Sal wrapped both hands around his mug. Best I can trace it, going on 10 months. 10 months. Milo had been 6 for most of that. I did the math in my head and I didn't like a single number I landed on. "The boy?" I said. Sal looked at me steady. "No sign it's about him specifically. But the timing of the sedation, it lines up close with when this thing with Ashworth picked up frequency. She needed the hours. The boy was always underfoot, so she made sure he wasn't." I closed the folder and sat with that a good long while. Sal didn't push, just drank his coffee and let an old man sit with something no grandfather should ever have to sit with. She hadn't done it out of cruelty. She'd done it out of convenience, and somehow that landed worse than cruelty would have. "What's Ashworth know?" I asked finally. "That's the thing," Sal said, setting his mug down. "He knows about the boy. Been told he's a handful, doesn't sleep well, whatever excuse she's using. Never once asked a follow-up question. Coward. 2 grown adults circling that house. One bound to Milo by blood, one there by choice, and neither one had looked at a 6-year-old and asked a single question worth asking. And then there was Erin, working himself ragged, trusting completely, missing everything right in front of him. I paid for the coffee, tucked the folder under my arm. "Sal, I need this airtight. Dates, times, all of it, documented clean." "Already on it," he said. I drove home with the windows down. Arizona in late October has a smell to it, that first hint of cool cutting through the dry heat, the season finally letting go a little. Milo was at my place, asleep in the guest room, the real kind of sleep this time, natural, safe, that mitt on the pillow beside him like a stuffed animal. I stood in the doorway and watched him breathe a minute. Then I sat down at my kitchen table and opened the old logbook I used to use back at the station for incident reports. And I started writing everything down in my own hand, dates. What doctor? Quan had told me, what Sal had just handed me, every piece of it in order. I called Frank and left a message. "We're ready to move." Then I called my son, not to tell him everything, just, "Erin, I need you to come by tomorrow. It's important. He drove up Friday evening around 6, pulled into my driveway in that gray Tahoe he loves, walked up looking like a man, expecting a nice dinner and nothing more, relaxed, jacket slung over one arm. No idea what was coming. Milo was already down for the night in the back bedroom, and whatever was about to happen at that table wasn't for a 6-year-old's ears. Not that night. Not ever if I had my way. I'd made pot roast, the same meal I cooked for Aaron every single time. Life handed him something hard. The year he failed out of 2 semesters. The year his first job fell through. He never knew it was a ritual. I never told him. Some things you just do without explaining. He came in, hugged me, and looked around. Smells good in here. Where's the boy? Down for the night. Doing better. Got some color back. He smiled. Good. He needed this. He sat down. So what's going on, Dad? You sounded off on the phone. Eat first, I said. He gave me that look he's had since he was 14, the one that says, "You're acting strange, but I'll humor you," and he picked up his fork. We ate. I let him finish. Let him have his second helping, and his sweet tea. Let him be comfortable one last time, before I turned his whole life sideways. Then I stood up, went to the counter, and set 3 things in front of him: the medical report, the pharmacy records Frank had helped trace, Sal's folder. I sat back down and didn't say a word. Let the evidence talk, I always figured. Aaron looked at me, then at the papers, and he picked up the medical report first. Slow, the way you handle something you're already dreading. He read it. His face didn't crumple, didn't explode. It just went still, the way water goes still right before something breaks the surface. He set it down, picked up the pharmacy records next, read those too, set them down. Then he opened Sal's folder. The photographs were right on top. He closed it after the first 2. My kitchen got so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming. Then Aaron stood up, slow and controlled, and said, "Give me a minute," and walked down the hall to the bathroom and shut the door. I sat at that table and waited. Take all the time you need, son. He was in there long enough I refilled my tea twice, long enough the clock over the stove ticked through most of 10 minutes. When he came back, his eyes were red, but his voice was steady. He sat down, looked at the folder, without touching it again. "Does Milo know what was happening?" he asked. "No. He just knows it made him feel sleepy and he didn't like it." Aaron nodded once, slow. "Good. He doesn't need more than that." His jaw was tight. And right there I saw my son clear as day, not the blindfolded husband who'd filed his own boy's swaying and heavy eyes under growth spurt and gone back to his laptop, but the father underneath all that travel and trust, misplaced on the wrong person. He was still in there. He just needed somebody to hand him the truth straight. "How long have you known?" he asked. "Since Tuesday." He looked up sharp. "You've been sitting on this since Tuesday?" "I needed it locked down tight before I brought it to you. Didn't want to hand you something you could talk yourself out of." He was quiet a moment, then let out a short breath that was almost a laugh, no humor in it at all. "You ran the whole investigation before you showed me the fire." "Old habit," I said. He looked at the folder one more time, then pushed it aside and pulled out his phone. "I need that lawyer's number," he said. "That's my boy." Aaron didn't confront Kaylee that night, or Saturday either. He spent the weekend at my place, sleeping in his old room, eating breakfast across from Milo, watching him carry that mitt from room to room while he drank his coffee, just watching him, storing it up. Sunday, he drove back to Chandler alone. He'd talked to Frank twice by then, moved money into a separate account Saturday morning, photographed some documents out of the home office, done every bit of it careful and quiet, no wasted moves. Learned that from somebody, I imagine. Monday morning, he waited until Milo was at school. I drove him myself, signed him in, made sure he was safe and sound, and then Aaron walked into that kitchen, in Chandler, and sat down across from Kaylee, at the same table she posted about on her social media. Good light, coffee mugs arranged just so, caption about Sunday mornings and gratitude. He told me the whole thing that evening, word for word, and I'll tell it to you the same way. She was on her laptop when he walked in, looked up, smiled, normal Monday. He sat down across from her and slid the medical report over. She looked at it, looked at him, and he watched that smile come apart in real time. She started explaining, before he'd asked her a single thing. First mistake. "Aaron, I can explain. He wasn't sleeping well, and I just..." He let 10 full seconds of silence sit there. Then he reached into the folder and set down the pharmacy records, then the photographs. She looked at the pictures of herself and Derek Ashworth and went completely still. I trusted you, Aaron said, voice never rising, not once. With my son, with this house, with my name. He stood up. You used every bit of it. Aaron, please, he's my son too. I love him. I would never. You drugged him, still calm, still level, for 10 months. So you'd have more time with him. He picked his keys up off the counter. Whatever you tell yourself about that from here, that's yours to carry, not mine. He walked to the door. She called after him. Are you taking him from me? He stopped, turned around, one last time. You did that, he said. Not me. And he walked out. I want to tell you how it ended, and I mean the real version, not the movie version, because real justice doesn't come with music playing under it. It comes with paperwork and court dates and a whole lot of waiting, but it comes. Full custody awarded to Aaron, 58 days after he walked out that door. Kaylee's attorney tried arguing stress, mental health, extenuating circumstances, the whole playbook. Frank Delgado put Dr. Kwan's testimony on the record, put the lab results in front of the judge, put 10 months of traced pharmacy purchases on the table, documented clean, time-stamped, undeniable. The judge didn't need convincing. Supervised visitation only, pending a full investigation by the state. Endangerment charges filed by the county attorney's office. Derek Ashworth, when investigators showed up at his dealership, cooperated fast and completely, handed over every date, every message, every location, threw her under the bus without blinking to save his own skin. Coward did one decent thing in the whole affair, and it was saving himself at her expense. The house in Chandler sold as part of the settlement, left Kaylee with a fraction of the life she'd spent years curating. The social media page went quiet. The Sunday morning coffee photos stopped. By the new year, somebody else's name was on that mailbox. No explosion, no scene, just paperwork, the way real things end when you build them right. If this one got to you the way it got to me telling it, do an old man a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't, and tell me in the comments what you'd have done in my shoes. I'll be back soon with another one. Take care of the little ones in your life. They notice more than we think, and sometimes all they need is somebody willing to listen close enough to hear them.